As you all gave me reports, Jack and I had, previous to coming here tonight, sort of talked about what do we see as some possible next steps and how we can move not only the Equal Justice Initiative forward, but as you know, there's so many things that need to be addressed. And so one of the things that, and based on what I'm hearing from you, and thank you, Maurice, with this whole idea, I've taken off my shoes. I hope you all are okay with that. So what we were talking about is the need for exactly what you said. Maybe what we would call, say, a temporary steering committee, so that members from Movement for Change, Race and Reconciliation, League of Women Voters, and others could begin to specifically look at where are we going from here, because it's been very piecemeal, but especially as it relates to this Equal Justice Initiative for markers for the lynchings, as well as the sand, collecting the sand and all of that, to really have that be a community effort. And I know that there are many church groups who are also affiliated, so please don't think I'm leaving out any of you. I'm just simply not recalling everybody right now. But if we could begin to think about that, and I love what you said, Maurice, about then, if we have the temporary committee formed, then that committee could go ahead and start meeting and sort of laying out some next step for us all to work together as a collective, because quite frankly, there's more power when there are more people, right? And it needs to be a joint effort. It shouldn't be somebody in one place saying one thing and then somebody in another effort. And what we've seen over the past 3 years, I believe it is, Julie, right, that Race and Reconciliation has been operational. We've seen tremendous support and collaboration, and what's the word I'm trying to come up with? Everybody has come together in a very positive way. So that was one of the things we talked about.
So let's pause on that one for a minute, Mr. Chairman. And let's ask if you think the idea of a temporary steering committee, temporary meaning, well, we'll get started, people kind of function. If it feels good, they continue. If it doesn't quite feel good, they kind of drop away and somebody else come on. But anyway, to have some semi-official group that represents, that begins to make decisions so that things can move on, that will set agendas and respond to things and so forth. If somebody from the press were to come along and say, well, there are some 2 or 3 people that you can talk to about what we are trying to do. If somebody has resources or questions to ask, there is somebody that can say with some degree of authority representing this group so far, this is the way you might approach this and so forth. So number one is, and when I say temporary, you know, it's like we don't need to cast stuff in stone right now. We can trust each other to say, well, I'll kind of get started with this. If I can continue, I will. Or somebody else may look at it and see it going along and say, I'm going to be a part of that. So we don't have to get official with you know, it's like, okay, just come find a chair and sit down and join us. We only talk about work. That's all we're talking about is how can you put your shoulder to the wheel. Does that make sense to kind of have a temporary something, and maybe down the road, maybe some money will find its way peeping out, and somebody might say, well, you know, we need to kind of get a little bit more official here, maybe a C3 or something like that. Well, somebody's got to make these decisions and so forth. But right now, does that make sense to you, to have a temporary? Yes, please.
Just to clarify, would that be for Race and Reconciliation in general, or just the EJI initiative?
No, it would be in general. It would be in general. The EJI stuff would be a part of that. But what we're talking about is a community. This is what we're looking at tonight. We're looking at a community coming together to look at an issue that has been with us for a long time. and asking ourselves the question, well, where do we go with this? And how do we bring as many people along with us as we can? How can we begin to be strategic about what we are doing here, et cetera? And so we're saying, well, one of the things that we might consider is to have, at least for now, a temporary group of folk who will take that on, and hopefully that will grow into something perhaps a bit more permanent. Maybe it'll end up with a name, God knows, who knows, whatever. But the idea is somebody needs to look at what's going to happen next meeting and where it's going to be and some of the other initial decisions. All of you know what this is about. Do you think that's worth doing? Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you, if you will. You know who you are. If you want to be a part of this steering committee, at least for the next little while, if you are connected with a group that you feel needs to really be represented, et cetera, we aren't going to have any voting, and we're not going to have any fighting, or there will be no struggle for power and all of that stuff. If you think like you want to contribute to this group, if you want your group or your ideas to be a part of that, we're simply going to ask you if you will vacate your chair, move to the front, turn around and look at everybody else, and they look at you, and you'll say, I'm one volunteer. And then before you know it, hopefully 2, 3, 4 other, 5 or 6 other people come up and join you, and then they will say, we will assume responsibility for the next little while of kind of steering things along. And we expect all of you and others to support us, to give us your trust and confidence and give us your support and prayers, to help us figure out how to move forward, to bring a community together, to do some work that has been waiting for you to be done for 300 years. So who would come forward to be a part of that steering committee, for lack of a better term? Thank you, my brother. Didn't take me long this time. No. He's a fast learner. Thank you. Who else would be a part of the steering committee?
I'll do it, but I can't do it.
Frank, come on, brother, man. Yeah. He looks like a strong supporter. This man got a good shoulder. He's doing a lot of work.
What did you say?
Oh, here she comes. Here she comes. The brain of the guy. Come on, let me put my hand on that. Okay. Well,
All right,
the steering
so-
committee is beginning to look good. Now, y'all listen up. Listen up. We're going to ask these folks to do some work. We're going to ask them to make some sacrifices. And we're going to ask them to look to you for support and connection and so forth. Now, anybody else come forward to be a part of this committee?
I can, but I can't do it until May.
Well, I tell you, when you come up here now, come on, brother. Come on, get it. We understand that you can't be the most active and functional member right now. But you can pray for them, you can talk with them on the phone, you can do all those kinds of things. And then when you get a little bit more time, you give them a little bit more. Now, folks, look at this committee. Think of who they represent. Look at the diversity that we have here. Now, we just, you know, if your heart tells you now, you got to get up here and be a part of this, come on. But if your heart is telling you they look pretty good to me and I can support that, you know, hold on to your chair. But if there's anybody else that want to come and do this work, and by the way, you don't have to come tonight. If you want to come later, that's all right too. Because we're just talking about work, sacrificing and working together to make something magic happen in this community. Anybody else? Okay. How many folk are there? 6.
No.
That's okay. Okay, we got these folks here. What we're gonna do is all of your suggestions, if you will, please physically give up your notes to these folks right here, right now, symbolically. All the note takers, bring them up here and put them in the hands of these folks right here. All your notes and all your stuff.
Sir?
Yes, please.
I'm new here. I wonder if these people might identify themselves, introduce themselves?
Who are y'all? The man is asking.
I'm Gail Fraser, as Dr. Wiley said earlier, and I'm Vice President at Pensacola State College for Institutional Diversity. I also produce the Aware Show that's on WSOE TV. That's hosted by Dee Dee Shaw.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Mary Collins. I'm the chair of the Women's Issues Committee of the League of Women Voters here in Pensacola.
Maurice Hargraves, I'm the co-chair of the Education and Human Rights Committee within Stronger Together here in Pensacola.
I'm Pat Crawford, I'm Executive Director of WUWF. I'm here because of my wife tonight, who was brave enough to get up and volunteer to be one of the committees, so this is the least I can do is get involved. And I can use her notes.
I'm Christopher Scott Satterwhite. Give you both names because I go by both of them. But I teach English over at UWF, and I'm also a member of Movement for Change, so I represent.
And I'm Julie Cotton, also from the University and Literacy Conservation.
Very good. Give them a hand. Now, friends, what we're going to do is we're going to ask them, if you guys in the front row give up the chair, so we're going to ask them to draw a circle. If you all will, just take a minute to have your first meeting.